It's me again. Oh my goodness, it's hot. I might have to take off this bird head. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's Texas. And it's gonna be like over 100 for the foreseeable future. The next week we have, I'll pull up the weather forecast here, 104 to 170 degrees. It's hot. There you go. It's hot. It's pretty hot right now. I go outside and I think I just melt. And it's only the beginning of June. Just wait till the real heat comes. Oh my goodness, next month. I hope this is only like a heat spell and we can go back to the 90s at least. So today I thought I would talk about this particular article which was requested, and it talks about why specific counties in Texas and New Mexico, just a handful of counties, control a lot of the oil production of the globe, at least for America. So as I've stated before in previous videos, America is much more independent on its oil production than it was when I was a child. And this is because there's new technology and it's allowed us to really go into untapped reserves. Because when I was a child, I was told by the time I hit this age, there'd be no more oil left. And I get to this age and they're like, oh yeah, we have like 60 years worth of oil left. So with that being said, this article is from March and it's before really a lot of the embargoes took place. And it talks about the Texas Permian Basin. I did like this article quite a bit. So it had some really wonderful graphs. If you read this article, you will see that a lot of the graphs kind of end at the beginning of 2020, right when the dip happened. But if you go to the USGS, a lot of those graphs end at 2020 as well. But the data sets are through the end of 2020. So according to the USGS, during the 2020 COVID dip, we did see that most of the oil and gas assets in America, the Marcellus, the Utica, the Barnett, Anadarko, the Bakken Shale, all of those reduced in productivity. And they were reduced in proven reserves. The Permian, however, was the only basin on this list which upped its reserves. And quite a few companies bought the dip. I will cite ConocoPhillips, which during October of 2020, they bought Concho Energy. Concho now run the former Shell asset, which ConocoPhillips bought in September through December 2021. That was that $9.5–10 billion sale. ConocoPhillips bought it from Shell, but Concho is the operating company of that. Chevron bought Noble Energy during the dip as well. At the same time Conoco was buying Concho, Chevron was acquiring Noble Energy. The companies who did have the cash on hand to buy the dip bought the dip. And I often get asked this a lot is, Bird Lady, why don't these other oil companies just buy the dip? Why don't they just buy land when it's cheap and hold on to it and then start producing? And that's a really good question. A lot of oil companies do not usually have that type of cash on hand just to go out and buy the dip. Some do, as you can see. ConocoPhillips did, Chevron did. They could buy the dip. They were a big enough company, flush with cash. Exxon has really yet to make a move. They've been saying that they're going to make a move now for the past almost 2 years, and they really haven't made a move. It was also during this time that Marathon sold Speedway for $17 billion during the COVID. And it closed right around the time of the Torchlight Metamaterials merger is when the Marathon sold their Speedway asset. So this brings us back to this article. They have some wondrous graphs on there. It states why Texas, Permian, and the United States in general, and I would say Canada in this as well, are favorable because a lot of these other countries, like the OPEC countries, their main buyer over there is Europe, which like to put on a bunch of environmental regulations. If New Silk Road fully comes to fruition, that would make it much easier for these OPEC countries to sell oil and gas to China. But they're used to European prices. That's why they're so flush with cash. Look at this graph here. This is the cost of goods sold, your break-even point, right? Notice in the United States, the average cost of goods sold is $36 a barrel. That includes the taxes, just for that production alone. Not your net income taxes, but the actual production taxes on the oil itself. It's $36 a barrel, right? And that's about current with early 2022. Early to mid 2022, $36 a barrel. Some places are lower, like, Harold Hamm. They cite here Harold Hamm. And I've talked about Harold Hamm before, how he's really good at choosing particular properties that have the infrastructure to make that cost of goods sold significantly lower. That's why he purchased that Pioneer property for $3.25 billion, is because it came with a lot of water infrastructure. The cost of goods sold was pretty low. It came with a lot of infrastructure, pipeline, water line. That's how Harold Hamm likes to roll. And with this average being cost of goods sold, $36 a barrel, Harold Hamm's is currently sitting at like 24 for mid-2022. It's crazy. He projected it being 23, so I'll say 24 for Harold Hamm. He's very well under the margin there. That's probably why he's the richest man in Oklahoma. But as you can see, Saudi Arabia has very low cost of goods sold. So there's a lot of conflict. There's also a lot of government. America is decently free and we have oil. A lot of these other countries, which are major producers, those are all ruled by a royal family, more or less. You have Venezuela, who we've seen the government come and go with that, and that's caused a lot of problems. And this article does cite that. Texas, United States, Canada. Texas was its own country for a little bit. These are more or less free areas. We do have the restrictions on drilling on public lands, and those restrictions are still in effect. Some people thought they wouldn't go in effect, but recently when those leases came up for sale, a lot of them got pulled back from Biden administration. They got pulled off the market. But private lands still remain high. And in fact, this article cites that as long as WTI remains over $110 a barrel, production this year will increase 25%. Okay, 25%. This article then goes on to say Exxon still, we're still waiting for moves from Exxon. Exxon is looking to expand by about 25%. And Chevron's looking to expand 10%. And we know Chevron had some pretty aggressive share buybacks this past quarter. I'm looking forward to seeing what Exxon's going to do. And Marathon. I know in the Q4 of Marathon earnings, Credit Suisse asked Marathon, with their share buybacks, it looks like they're going to make an acquisition, to which Marathon sidestepped. I actually covered that, and I got really excited about it. So you have all these big players of oil wanting to expand. It talks about Devon Energy here and them not wanting to expand. Some companies don't want to expand because, that there could be a long-term compliance. You expand, you're going to have more overhead. Maybe shareholders don't want you to expand. Keep current production. We'll have a better long-term dividend. Some companies want to expand. And now's the time to expand because the cost of goods sold remains pretty stable. The price of oil fluctuates wildly. So if you had a cost of goods sold this year of $36, 2 years ago it was $25. But 2 years ago, oil was sitting at what, 25, 30, $40 a barrel. And now oil's, triple that cost. And your cost of goods sold only went up 30%. It behooves you to really start developing that property now, because you can make it faster. You can reach a point where you're paying back the infrastructure much quicker. You're paying back those capital investments much quicker from a financial point. And that's why a lot of companies, again, choose to develop when oil is at a very high price. All of these, to me, show bullish for the region. Wind is also, I'll say this, wind is also developing quite a bit in Texas. And it's funny enough because they talk about the Eagle Ford maturing. And yes, it is maturing. The gas is still going and oil is still pumping there. The Eagle Ford was very aggressively developed from 2010 to 2014. It was very aggressively developed. And then around 2019, it started developing. COVID hit, it took a dive. But then things, what they did was they more or less reduced production a bit during COVID. I know this because I have friends who have marathon property down in Eagle Ford. The Eagle Ford is not aggressively as drilling new wells because they did that quite a bit. If you go down there, it's like, well. Check Google Maps. It's peppered with, pad sites. What is going down in Eagle Ford right now is actually wind power. Because he has oil and gas wells on his property, he's now going to get some windmills. He has a big property. He's going to get some windmills on there now for extra income. He's looking into that. And in fact, the windmill companies are moving in because they know that people like to do the whole passive income thing down there. They're used to that, and they want a steady stream of passive income. So as a result, all these windmill companies are coming down there. It's crazy. So that's fine if production kind of wanes a bit. We'll have alternative power sources. Texas is number one in the country for wind. We like to be number one in a lot of things. Everybody's moving to Texas. I think our grid needs all the help it can get. So, getting to the point, what does this say for our property? Well, a lot of areas are looking to expand. One of the main holdbacks is, of course, the infrastructure. I think that can be, quickly developed with the demand. The good thing about the Oro Grande is the second liquid gold, besides oil, is water. And we do have those water aquifer, which I've talked about before. And this is right under the property, and I've gave the numbers, really rough estimates on how much that can save our capital startup to develop the property, because we already have the water on check. You don't have to truck in the water because we already have water there. It's much cheaper just to drill a couple of wells for water, have some tanks, boom, there's your water. For mud, to create your hydrostatic fluid. As companies want to expand, and as the lack of federal lands are available, that leaves us with private lands. And largely underdeveloped land, such as the Oro Grande, all of a sudden look very desirable. And yes, it is frustrating, but the whole oil is staying up. Oil continues to stay up, and as long as oil is continuing to be magically over $110 a barrel, companies are really looking for things. And I certainly am very bullish about this. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed these graphs again. U.S., look at Canada's cost of goods sold, $53 a barrel. U.S. has a median cost. It's not as low as some countries. We pay good wages here to our oil field workers. It's a desirable job. Young person gets out there. He doesn't want to go to college. He can go work as a roughneck. Great. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I will see you soon. Goodbye.